Welcome back, Illumineers. Thank you for joining me again as we continue our review of the Rise of the Floodborn set. Today we're going to be talking about the color Amethyst, and there are a lot of good cards in Amethyst. Again, we're going to go over the ones that are constructed worthy, and I will note if they are usable or if they only fit a limited role. First up is Arthur, Wizard's Apprentice. 3-cost, non-inkable, 1/3, 1 lore, super rare. Whenever this character quests, you may return another chosen character of yours to your hand to gain 2 lore. This card is already making waves in several builds. Most of them are using various cards from this set, particularly in Amethyst, such as the Merlins, Rabbit, and Goat particularly, but there's also some other cards with interplay effects that it can also bounce. So in effect, if you have something to bounce, you're gaining 3 lore per quest with Arthur. So be on the lookout. I expect this to be in several competitive decks in the new meta. Next up is Blue Fairy. It's a 2-costed inkable 1/1 for 1 lower evasive, and whenever you play a Floodborn character, you may draw a card. So there's a cycle of these. They are all not Floodborn characters that have an effect. And when you play a Floodborn character, you get to do something. Now, even though there's a large number of Floodborn characters in the set, many more than set 1, I don't know if you can fully build a deck around them. It's a cheap evasive. If it had 2 lore instead of 1, I would certainly think about this for constructed. As it sits, I don't know that I can. Next up is a new goon, Chip the Teacup. Pretty obvious here. Chip does not have a Floodborn version in this set that he can be shifted onto. He's just a regular goon, and we already have Archimedes, which is already superior. I mean, just kidding. You're going to play whichever favorite one you have. Nothing else to say. Next up is Dr. Facilier's Savvy Opportunist. 4-cost inkable, 4/2, villain sorcerer with 1 lore and evasive. Only having 1 lore is the major downside with this Dr. Facilier. Most of the ones that we are packing in the evasive-based decks have 2 lore. Granted, this is very good for attacking opposing evasives, since many of them are X4s. All the way up to Tigger. So he may have a place to fight a specific metagame, but I don't think, other than that, I don't think he's constructed worthy. Next up is Elsa Gloves Off, 4-cost inkable, 3/4, Hero Queen Sorcerer, 1 lore, Challenger +3. So 6 strength in a challenge is large and in charge. This thing takes out a lot of characters. And at least in limited, this thing was a house. Rise of the Floodborn limited, this thing was a house. She could take out whatever she wanted. I don't know if this one currently fits in any constructed formats. Right now, I don't really see that there's a place for it, but that may change. Next up is another vanilla. We got a 5-cost inkable 3/7 2 lore fairy godmother, a storyborn ally fairy. Um, Again, this to me is more of a limited card or a filler. Um, we already have a lot of cards with 2 lore in Amethyst that we're already running. Um, and I don't really see a spot for this anywhere. This is actually a good body in limited, though. Now let's get to the legendary. So this one is actually seeing some talk and some play. 5-cost inkable, 3/4 fairy godmother mystic armorer, Floodborn mentor fairy, shift of 2, has 2 lore. Forget the coach, here's a sword. Whenever this character quests, your characters gain challenger +3, and when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand this turn. So it's technically a cheaper Dr. Facilier that only works if she has quested, but the buff for your characters is ginormous. Now, the 7-drop Dr. Facilier that shifts, to me, overall, I won't say it's a better card, but it returns those characters to hand no matter what, as long as he's in play. This has a restriction, but it is cheaper to play. She's inkable, he isn't. The shift cost is less. And the Challenger +3 bonus is actually pretty bonkers to be able to get opposing characters off the board. I've already seen this hit several lists in testing, and I've heard a lot of good comments about it. Again, it will require going into the lab, but I like where this card is headed. And of course, the last version of the Fairy Godmother. Same stats as the other one, 3-cost versus 5-cost. And when you play a character named Cinderella, you may exert chosen character. There's only one Cinderella in the first chapter. There are 3 in this set. One in Amber, which we just reviewed, and 2 in Steel that we'll get to later. So there's a few targets for this. If you're going to, if you want something to shift on to, this is probably the cheapest and most effective version. But you may not get a whole lot of value out of it other than that. Hey, persistent presence. Okay, this thing was annoying as all get out. 2-costed inkable 2/1 1 lore. When this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. I mean, he's harder to kill than a cockroach. Obviously, he's supposed to be, because this is a mystical bird that constantly being reborn, similar to the phoenix. This also fits the bounce theme that you see in Amethyst with a lot of the cards, and hard to get rid of. I don't know right now. I don't know that he fits in any constructed decks, because most of the ones, there are specific targets that there are cards currently being used. We'll see if anything gets fleshed out. But yeah, I mean, you basically just keep throwing the poor bird under the bus and returning it to hand is kind of funny. Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio's Conscious. 2 costed inkable, 1/2 for 1 or evasive. When you play this character, if you have a character named Pinocchio in play, you may draw a card. Fairly thematic, very easy to understand. A 1/2 evasive for 2. There's not a lot of evasives at 2. Matter of fact, I think in set 1 we didn't have any. We had some at 1, some at 4, 5, 6, and so on. So he technically he's hard to deal with if you don't have some sort of targeted removal or you're running an evasive package of some sort. And the bonus is fine if you is great if you have Pinocchio in play. Does this have a place? Good question. Right now, I haven't seen any builds that have been taking advantage of this. There's 3 versions of Pinocchio in this set. But this really doesn't enhance the Pinocchios enough to warrant his inclusion. Cusco, Wanted Llama. 2-cost inkable, 1/2, Storyborn King. When this character is banished, you may draw a card and has 1 lore. So this one actually has been seeing some play, particularly in the bounce deck that we were talking about earlier. If your opponent decides that it's going to banish, challenge and banish this Cusco, you're going to net a card off of it. And if he just lets it there, you could gain 3 or 4 lore off of it and be in a much better position at the end. So, and it's banished in any manner. So if they decide to use a removal, fire the cannons, a smash, or whatever to get rid of him, you net cards back. So this is actually a good value engine for Amethyst, as if it needed more card draw. All right, now we get into the Madame Mims and the Merlins. So the Madame Mims all have this particular game text. When you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand. Or 2 if it's the legendary. This one is this is a stronger version of Rafiki because it is inkable. It has 4 strength. And it will help your bounce synergies in this deck. A 4/3 takes out more than the 3/3 does, which I think is very, very good. This is another card that's getting played in the Amethyst X bounce deck. Now, the X means other colors. I've seen 2 or 3 different colors schemes with this grouping of cards so far. So it'll be interesting to see which one shakes out. But yes, the fox is chasing the rabbit, which I think is pretty neat. Speaking of legendaries, Madame Mim Purple Dragon. The flavor text is Chef's Kiss. Anyone who watched Sword in the Stone knows that she says no pink dragons and stuff for things to transform into, and she transforms into a purple dragon. 7-cost inkable, 5/7, villain sorceress dragon, evasive, which is humongous. 4 lore. When you play this character, banish her or return another 2 chosen characters of yours to your hand. So this isn't quite Maleficent level powerful dragon, um, but you have the combination of the bounce energies, the evasiveness, 7 willpower, and 4 lower. Um, Makes this a hard character to take down without something like Dragonfire, etc. Um, most of the early builds of um, bounce, as I'm calling it, which means return things in play to hand, um, are running 2 copies of this. That seems to be about right. Um, I don't think you want 4, um, but 4 lore and evasive is just hard to deal with. Um, because there are situations you may not have 2 characters in play. Move along. All right. Here's the human version. Madame Mim, rival of Merlin, 5 costed inkable 2/5, 2 lore, villain sorcerer, shift 3. Exert. Play a character with cost 4 or less for free. They gain rush. At the end of turn, banish them. All right. So this card is not, I won't say it's bonkers, but I will say a combination of cards in this set involving Madame Mim, rival of Merlin, creates a, I won't say it's an infinite combo, um, but a combo by which you can go from 0 to 20 lore in 1 turn. Now, there's a lot of pieces, and I do mean a lot of pieces, to this combo. Um, it involves LeFou Instigator, Shere Khan, and some way to give your opponent's characters resist +2. If your opponent has a character in play that's exerted, that you can give resist +2 on, if then the combination of having a dry Madame Mim, rival of Merlin, a copy of Shere Khan in play, and a copy of LeFou Instigator in your hand, oh, I should say that the exerted character in play for your opponent has to be able to deal at least 2 damage. There's also another missing piece. We need a way to return LeFou back to your hand. The 7-drop Dr. Facilier from set 1 is probably the best of the bunch. So you're actually going to need a card that gives resist +2 to your opponent's character, an opponent character that can be challenged that has at least 2 strength, a dry Madame Mim, a Shere Khan, a LeFou Instigator, and Dr. Facilier in play. So what you're going to do is you're going to exert Madam Mim to play LeFou Instigator. He gains Rush. LeFou Instigator readies Madam Mim. You use the effect that gives your opponent's character resist +2, and then you challenge LeFou into the chosen character. Shere Khan's ability triggers. You gain 1 lore when the challenge is initiated. LeFou doesn't do any damage to your opponent's character. Your opponent's character deals enough damage to destroy LeFou, and Dr. Facilier triggers, returning LeFou to your hand. And you simply repeat that until your lore is at 20. That's a lot of pieces, and it's difficult, but it can be done. So be on the lookout for somebody trying some strange and weird combo. Eventually, we knew we'd get one. It is a trading card game. Madam Mim Snake. This is very well statted. A 2-cost inkable 3/3 for 1 lore. When you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand. This is already seeing play again in the bounce deck. This is also very good, I will say, for letting you reset one of your own characters. For example, let's say you're playing Amber. Your turn 1 is Lilo, making a wish. You on turn 2, you quest with her for 2, but you didn't pull a Simba. Well, you can simply play Madam Mim Snake and return Lilo to your hand, and then play her fresh next turn. Even though it is slowing your lore production down, it is keeping your opponent from getting it off the table. It is a trick that I did with a couple of my characters during draft, which is pretty cool. Now we're into the Merlins. Merlin Crab, 3-cost inkable, 3/3, 1 lore. When you play this character, and when he leaves play, chosen character gains Challenger +3. I don't know how well this is constructed playable. I will say it was pretty playable in Limited. Is it basically let me take out big characters for smaller investments. All of the Merlin cards are going to have this same game text when you play this character and when it leaves play. So it triggers when being returned to hand, it triggers when it's being banished, etc. So this is a new linchpin index. All right, this guy is the GOAT. 4-cost inkable 4/3, 1 lore. Merlin Goat. When you play this character and when he leaves play, gain 1 lore. So there's a reason they only gave this character 1 lore in its lore pips. Because if you play it on turn 4 or sooner, if you can ramp to it, you're going to gain 1 lore immediately. Next turn, you can quest for 1 lore. And if you decide that you want to return it to hand, or even play something that banishes him, you're going to gain another lore. And you can rinse and repeat. I drafted 2 of these games where I could get these out. I could maintain a good advantage of, they don't want to challenge the character because I don't want to get it off the board. They don't want me returning it to hand because I'm going to gain more and replay it. So it left them in a very bad situation. This is a 4 of in the new Amethyst bounce deck. Speaking of cards that are 4 ofs in that deck, Merlin Rabbit. It's a 2 strength, 3 willpower, 4-cost non-inkable rare. When you play this character and when he leaves play, you may draw a card. There's a reason why this one is not inkable, folks. This is I said, it plays very well. It's been um, this does not have the stat line of the other characters, but this still plays very well in that deck. Also, don't underestimate using a card like the new bounce card in Emerald, where you return a character you control to your hand, and then uh, force make your opponent return target chosen character to their hand with these last two cards effects. Merlin Shapeshifter, this is the one from the starter deck. 4-cost Inkable, 1/5 for 1 lore. When one of your other characters is returned to hand from play, this character gains +1 lore this turn. There were some of these being run in the Amethyst bounce decks. Arthur was really the linchpin because um, being able to bounce something and gain 2 lore off of it immediately without having to do extra things made it a little better than Merlin, but there were still some copies of this run. This is the one, I don't remember if this has been seeing play in there, but card selection is pretty good. 2-cost Inkable, 2/1 Merlin Squirrel, 1 lore. When you play this character and whenever he leaves play, look at the top card of your deck. You may put it back on top or at the bottom. So it's sort of a smaller version of Ursula's Cauldron, where you get to look and then move it around if you don't. This was actually pretty good filtering in limited. Um, I I don't know how strong this would be in constructed, based on numbers and lore type and the fact that this itself is not drawing you cards. All right, now that we're out of the Merlins, Peter Pan Shadow, 4-cost non-inkable, 2/3, 2 lore, evasive, rush, and tiptoe. When your other characters with rush gain evasive. Um, Super rare. So this is an interesting design. Um, Peter Pan, both it had a version with evasive and a version with rush, so it stands to reason that his shadow will have both. Um, there are quite a number of rush characters, particularly in Amethyst, um, but also in Ruby now. Um, that can be used both come into play, challenge your opponent's characters, get them off the board, and then once that has happened, now you have a bunch of evasive characters that your opponent cannot challenge back into. Um, so I actually think this is very, very good, as it lets you sort of combine two very powerful effects together, and make it very difficult on your opponent to make comeback. Pinocchio Star Attraction, 2 costs, not inkable, 1/1 with 3 lore. So this is the cheapest 3 lore character we've seen. There's a reason it's a rare, and there's a reason that it is not inkable. Just in Amethyst, you can go Maleficent Biding Her Time for 1, Quest for 2 on turn 2, play Pinocchio Star Attraction on turn 2. And then on turn 3, if Maleficent has somehow survived, you're going to quest for 5. And will be at 7 on turn 3. And that's not counting anything else. Pair it with Amber and have Simba onto, you can pair it with steel and have Hercules or the Prince on 3 bodyguarding for these two. Um, so, in other words, you better have some interaction, or this is going to get ridiculous quickly. Pinocchio on the run. So, this is the second Pinocchio. It's 5 cost, it is non inkable, 3/3, 2 lore, Floodborn hero, shift 3. When you play this character, you may return chosen character or item with cost 3 or less to their player's hand. So again, this supplements the bounce theme. You can bounce your own things if you want to, um, but you can also use it to bounce your opponent's things. Um, Oddly enough, um, the first place that I've thought about this is you're already bouncing in Emerald, and now you're adding Amethyst, where you can bounce your opponent's stuff as well. That's a lot of tempo that you can mess with on your opponent's side. 3/3 is not a very big body. Not inkable is painful, um, but there's some definite, like I said, tempo ideas here. And this is the last of the Pinocchios. This is another non-inkable 2 cost 1/1. Just has 1 lore, but when you play this character, you may exert chosen opposing character. This effect was actually quite good for Rise of Floodborn Limited, as it let you exert a character that they were holding back because they didn't want to get it challenged, and then all of a sudden, now you're challengeable. Um, I'll be honest. This might be the one that I don't seeing much play. Um, I could be wrong. This effect might be useful, but I would almost rather have a repeatable effect, although this is technically repeatable if you count the bounce characters. Not much to say here. This is a beautiful piece of art on Winnie the Pooh. This is the only Winnie the Pooh that we got in here, this set. Uh, this is actually very good for limited. Um, just not going to see any constructed play unless you want to build a Winnie the Pooh theme deck. All right. There's been some controversy about this card. Yzma, scary beyond all reason. Just look at that face. 6 cost inkable 4/4. 2 lore. Floodborn villain sorcerer, shift of 4. When you play this character, shuffle another chosen character into their player's deck. That player draws 2 cards. So, first of all, from what I'm understanding from players, some of the players are confused by this ability. To shuffle another chosen character card into a player's deck, that character must be in a zone that is visible by all players. In other words, that card has to be in play. You cannot shuffle a character card in a discard pile because it doesn't mention the discard pile, and you can't shuffle a chosen character card from your hand because it's not visible to both players into your deck. So whenever a card in this game and most other games refers to a card that must be chosen, if it does not mention the zone or the location that it's at, if it doesn't say in hand or in discard or in deck or in play, it defaults to in play only. Okay, so now that we've resolved that part of the issue, this is actually, I've actually seen this card being used in decks early on in this format, in this environment, because it can shuffle some of your inefficient characters that may be outclassed based on your board position back into your deck and net you 2 cards. Um, in a pinch, you could also shuffle a problematic character that your opponent controls back into their deck. Yes, it will net, you remove one off the table for them to draw two. But if it's a problematic character that you may not be able to deal with, this may be the best solution. Do not count out this card. Um, yeah, I don't even talk about this. This is a terrible look. If you want to play a Yzma to shift the other character onto, play the 2-drop from set 1. Now into the songs and actions. Gruesome and Grim, 3-cost uninkable song. Uh, Play a character costs 4 less for free. That character gains rush. At end of turn, banish them. So this is the ability of Madame Mim, rival to Merlin. It is a song. Um, I don't know how much play this will see. Um, Not inkable, one-time use character. Um, I hate that's the case because this artwork is great for the theme. Oh bother, I'm stuck. 1-cost inkable action. Shows an exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. Um, so this is the other half of the Elsa Spirit of Winter card. Um, Again, actions have to be really good in this game or playable for free on top of their effect so far to see play. Um, this to me is a limited card and nothing more at this time. Legend of the Sword and the Stone. 2-cost inkable action song. Chosen character gains Challenger 3 this turn. This, at least in my opinion, is basically for limited. And I'll tell you, I drafted a couple of these, and I don't think I ever once played them. I think I played more the other strength pumps more than I did this. Um, but then again, I had Pete in my deck, so. Binding Contract. 4-cost, non-inkable item. Exert one of your characters. Exert chosen character. All right, another card with some complicated rules. Um, so the first exert refers to the item. The second exert, since it refers to exert one of your characters, your character must be dry for you to use the second half of this ability. There was a discussion at my draft, and of course this was on the the official Disney Lorcana Discord. Uh, Steve answered that question and said, since it has the exert symbol and it is talking about a character, that character has to be dry to use this effect, to pay this cost, just like a song. If this would have been the word exert written out and not the symbol, they could have done it while wet or dry. So not quite as good as most players had this. Not sure it's constructed playability currently. Croquet Mallet. 1-cost uninkable. Banish this item. Chosen character gains rush this turn. I will say this was both quite amusing. I could play it out, let it sit there, and as soon as the situation came up where I could take a character out, I could play a character, give the character rush, and then crush his hopes and dreams and go about my day. Um, I think for the most part, you're probably going to still see the pocket watch, even though it costs one to activate. But at least the watch is inkable when you need it. Next to last card here, Perplexing Signpost. This is a 2-cost, uninkable item. Banish this item, return chosen character of yours to your hand. Um, Very flavorful. Obviously, this is from Alice in Wonderland, where she has no clue where she's going and she's getting lost. Um, I I, I, I'm really down on some of the items in this set. They don't produce enough um, positive effects to warrant their inclusion. Um, being uninkable and not being a repeat um, uh, uh, repeatable action where you can do it turn after turn really kind of waters this down for me. Now this card has merit. 3-cost uninkable item, the Sorcerer's Spellbook. Exert, pay 1 resource, gain 1 lore. So, long game control decks are going to play this because their whole identity is we're going to drag out the game as long as humanly possible, and we're going to use cards like these to gain small incremental value. And do we even technically need characters? Well, I'm sure you're going to need some at some level. Uh, but this could be an endgame finisher in a control mirror. So if you don't have a way to get rid of items in your deck, you may be in for some painful lessons. Um, I don't think the spell book itself is broken, but I do think it's an interesting design space that I don't know I would have tapped into so early. Um, you can play board control, um, all day, um, and just slowly gain a lore turn or one for each of these that are out until your opponent either concedes or you win. Um, I I don't know about dynamic gameplay as it requires no interaction from your opponent whatsoever. Characters, at the very least, require some level of interaction. That's my 2 cents. All right, that is Amethyst. What cards do you think are the most powerful in this color? Leave a like and a comment down below. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, and tell me which ones that you think are more powerful than I do. Until next time, no matter the game, there is no escape from